Subscribe to our YouTube channel and don't forget to press the bell icon to get all the latest updates.
We're on the ground in Leh, in Ladakh, trying to make sense of what may happen next in India's response to China. What we do know so far are a couple of new things. One, that the Indian Army has come out and denied reports that there are any soldiers in Chinese captivity. This rumor had been doing the rounds and was actually published by some sections of the media, not by us, but today it has seen an official rebuttal by the military. The second important development that has happened is that the Foreign Affairs Minister, Dr. Shankar, has denied that soldiers went in unarmed. But his statement seems to suggest that because of an existing protocol, our soldiers were armed but did not use those arms. So does that make sense? Does that make sense when our soldiers are being literally bludgeoned to death with stones, with iron rods, with clubs that have nail protrusions, and so on? Here on the ground in Leh, we've been trying to ask these questions, but everybody's extremely tight-lipped. It's a day when coffins are still going home. The army is clearly in a somber and an anxious mood, but there is no doubt about the fact that the honor of the uniform has to be redeemed. How can that be done? Will it be done militarily? Will it be done diplomatically? Will it be done economically? From the ground, the special broadcast this evening is by Ambassador Vivek Katju. We're joined by General Shankar Prasad, and we're joined by Sushant, Sareen, three very accomplished voices in the space of strategic affairs analysis. I'll start with you, Ambassador Katju, if I may. There is a lot of confusion over why soldiers would not use arms if they indeed had arms when they went to supervise what they thought was an exercise of Chinese troops withdrawing. General Panag, the former Northern Army commander, in an interview to me said that this had never happened in the history of the Indian Army. He was then confronted with the 1996 protocol, which he says he disagrees with. He says that applies only to border management. It doesn't apply to assault on soldiers. And the commanding officer would have had the mandate to use force as he thought necessary. Now we have this statement from the Foreign Affairs Minister in response to Rahul Gandhi and General Panag's interview, suggesting that the soldiers were armed when they left the post, but did not use these arms. Does it make sense to you?
Well, Barkha, I am not the best person to answer your question. I think we have a very eminent retired general on the panel, and he should. In the normal course, I would expect that the appropriate minister in the cabinet to respond to any questions relating to the army, including operational aspects of the army, is Raksha Mantri, the Minister of Defense. So this is all a little strange that the External Affairs Minister has chosen to respond to a query about this issue, whether our soldiers were really carrying arms or they were unarmed. The exact contours and details of the events that led to this terrible tragedy are still unknown. At least to me, they are not known. So therefore, I think I am in no position really to comment on the question that you raised, because I have no experience of how these things are actually managed on the ground, and someone with that experience can only respond to you authoritatively.
I'll shift my operational question to General Prasad in a moment, but let me ask you your overall assessment of what's going on here, right? We've heard hazy reports of Chinese casualties, but they have not been referenced actually in any official on-record statement or even the address by the Prime Minister. We have talks of China de-escalating or wanting to de-escalate, but there's no evidence that China has actually pulled back from the territories across the line of actual control that it has occupied. These spaces also give them the advantage of the heights. So if you had to make an overall assessment of what is going on, Ambassador, what would it be quickly?
Well, the first thing that strikes me is that the Chinese have not denied that they have not had casualties. So they are silent on the question of casualties, but there's been no denial from them. And I think that is a significant aspect, which I believe has also attracted international media attention. Uh, the second aspect is that there have been reports of Chinese intransigence about the about what they have done, and Chinese claims of areas which have been contested and contested very strenuously by India. My final comment to you is that quite clearly the Chinese have gone beyond what was the status quo ante and have tried to create facts on the ground. And certainly, this attempt by the Chinese to create facts on the ground, and they are there, is not acceptable. And we will now have to use all options to ensure that status quo ante is restored. And my last point to you is that the Prime Minister has already assured the nation that the sacrifice of the 20 brave hearts that we lost will not go in vain. So we'll have to wait and watch about how this assurance will be implemented.
Okay, let me ask General Prasad the operational question. Soldiers leave the post armed. According to the EEM, the protocol did not apply to them leaving without arms, but the protocol is about using arms in a face-off. Other generals have pointed out that this was not a drill face-off. This was not a normal face-off. This was not a border flare-up. This was 2 months of the Chinese actually occupying Indian territory across the LAC, and this was soldiers being bludgeoned, battered to death. That would have given the mandate to our men to make an assessment on the ground, General Prasad, and they would have had the mandate to use force if they so needed, despite the 1996 protocol.
Barkha, the protocol that seems to be existing, I'm not very familiar with it, that the arms will not be open, perhaps with an idea that if you open fire, it could escalate. So the intention is not to let it escalate and let us keep it under certain levels, and therefore arms will not be used, it will not be fired. Why will not be fired? Because it will create some casualties. Somebody will die if you open fire, and then it will escalate. What has happened now? Somebody's died, no? 20 people have died. A rifle has not been used, but a weapon has been used. A weapon has been used. A weapon can be, in the medieval times, these were the weapons. These are not the weapons of the modern army, but these are certainly weapons of the medieval. 500 years ago, people used to use these kinds of weapons. So this is a weapon. Now, all right, first of all, I'm not too sure. I'm sitting in Delhi. Whether the weapons were being carried or not carried, I cannot comment on it. I believe the foreign minister is saying they were carrying weapons, so be it. The issue is that when you go to have a chat or a talk or some kind of a discussion, and you find that the opposite side is getting more aggressive and using whatever weapons that they brought, I call this a weapon, the stick, the iron stick with nails, etc., and they start using it, and they kill the commanding officer. From the reports that I see, commanding officer, one of the earlier ones to have been killed.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, if somebody is going to use some force of any nature to kill any of my people, and least of all a commanding officer, Barkha, I will use all the powers which I have to neutralize that fellow. Please understand this. I'm very sorry to say today, in a forum like this, which is public, that I am completely appalled. What are we doing with our army? Are we making an army an impotent army? Army is not meant to fight with sticks. I have done training in the NDA for 3 years, IMA for 1 year, and military training for 40 years. Nobody's ever taught me how to use a stick, how to use a danda. Yes, we did boxing matches as a sport, but no one taught me how to do boxing in a field situation. I have been trained to use weapons from day one of my donning the uniform, and I can use a weapon. And I've also been told in self-defense, you will use the weapon. Nobody can, even the Constitution of India allows me to use a weapon if I have to defend myself. And defending myself doesn't mean personally me, it means also the colleagues of mine who are present in the situation, my commanding officer and other colleagues who are there. So I completely condemn this. First of all, I'm sorry to say, Foreign Minister is a very big man and we respect him, but I'm not too sure, and we believe him. I presume we have to believe him that we are carrying weapons. But if they were not used, it's a very, very wrong training, a very wrong example we are setting. The other important thing is this, Barkha, which I may like to continue with the same issue. I believe in this protocol was signed in 1996, which time even I was in service. And I was that time holding a pretty responsible operational appointment as the Major General General Staff of Northern Command. I was not familiar with this protocol. The protocol, to my understanding, would perhaps be more applicable to border policing forces, like the ITBF, like perhaps the BSF. In this situation, it was the ITBF.
Right.
If at all any confrontation without weapons to take place, well, it should be with the police forces who are perhaps trained in this kind of management of riots and things like that.
Right.
My view is that should the military come into picture, the military should have a free hand to tell the opposite enemy, and I'm calling them enemy, that if you cross across this line, which is so-called perceived line, then you will be warned to say, please don't cross, this is my area. We warn you not to cross it. If you will cross it, we will use fire. They continue to cross, then what should I do? I should fire a warning round to say, if you continue to keep coming up, I shall shoot to kill. You take precautions this side, you take what we call cover behind either a bunker or a trench or whatever it is, and then you open, and if they continue to come, last warning on the microphone to say, now we are shooting for effect. And if there are 30 people, let 30 people die. The point is, it doesn't excite me any bit that the X number of Chinese people also got killed. That's not the important point, Barkha. The important point is 23 of my men who are believed to be armed, who are witnessing their commanding officer being killed and are not able to do anything. What kind of training have been imparted to them and what kind of protocols they are asking them to follow?
So I think, Sushant, the part of the problem is that nobody is speaking very clearly or specifically. Even Dr. Jaishankar's tweet, at least at the moment, leaves a lot of questions. This is interpretative, that he's saying they left with arms, but they did not use them. We don't actually know what happened. And I understand that there's a certain amount of firefighting going on. Even today, commanders of both sides from India and China have met to try and hammer out something here. But Sushant, if you step back and look at everything we know so far, what are you able to piece together?
Quite honestly, Barkha, very little, because there are conflicting accounts coming from people, and people are quoting sources. I'm not in a position to judge whose source is better than somebody else's. In some things, some people have been proven correct. In other things, other people have been proven correct. So as of now, we are basically in a dark room and trying to feel around. And then, there are these snatches of, facts which come to light. And then we try and extrapolate from what we have been hearing and the facts. And then we try and draw a picture, which probably is not the right picture. And this, to my mind, is one of the fundamental problems of this government in terms of strategic communication. What is it about this government that you cannot have your strategic communications in place? Again, strategic communications is not that you disclose everything, you give the entire rundown on what the hell is happening on the ground, but you can certainly give enough information which actually lets people understand what the hell is happening and is able to correct some of the misperceptions which people might be having, some of the rumors which might be floating around. I think we have been extremely lax in that, and this is not the first instance that something like this has happened. So as a result, as they say in Hindi, jitne muh utni baatein. And that is, to my mind, a huge problem, which then, then every time somebody from a position of authority issues a certain statement, you try and look around. For example, the foreign minister's statement that they were carrying weapons. Then the questions which General Shankar Prasad has raised are the most valid questions. In fact, this is what I have been asking that look, the whole idea behind those protocols which were there on the borders was that casualties don't happen. But if casualties are happening, and you're not using weapons to defend yourself, to protect yourself and your comrades, then what the hell are you trying to do? So, these are questions which are going to come up right now. And I think it is extremely important for the government to, start laying out what exactly has happened. I think we are a resolute enough country to be able to handle bad news. We've handled bad news throughout our history. And then, we gird ourselves up and we confront the enemy the way the enemy is to be confronted. The second point to my mind is that, had the kind of casualties which have taken place not happened, you still had an option to play it down, brush it under the carpet, continue to have a standoff and say, okay, fine, we are going to negotiate, we are going to hold firm, we are going to ensure that nothing untoward happens, we will not let them advance. All of that shebang you can do. But after these casualties have happened, I think this maneuver for the government is very, very limited. And I think that is going to be the real challenge for the government right now, that you can't brush this under the carpet anymore. You have to come out and there has to be something which is seen to be happening. Now, does that mean that, after this immediate, because right now it seems both sides are trying to de-escalate matters, that they don't want at least the situation to escalate. But if indeed the Chinese have intruded beyond the line of actual control, are sitting in some areas. For example, it is now confirmed that at least insofar as Pangong Tso is concerned, they have moved up to Finger 4, which means that they have disturbed the status quo. Now, what are the options before the government now? Are we going to say, okay, fine, this far and no further? How is that going to play out in both the strategic domain as well as in the political domain, and then in some of the other sectors? So I think, frankly, it's going to be a tough call for the government. But the one thing they cannot any longer do is brush this under the carpet. So the sooner they come out with something far more credible than what has been coming out so far, I think the better it will be for the government and for the country.
I think that's well said, Ambassador Katju, but that takes us to the hard question. If coercive diplomacy or pragmatism or these talks that are on at high level, government to government, commander to commander, do not actually lead to the Chinese withdrawing from the Pangong Tso, Finger 4 area that we now know that they have taken control of. If we do not get the Chinese to withdraw from the heights, thereby giving them an advantage over us, a strategic advantage, can we afford to look at military options? Because it's quite clear and I'm not asking you a military question, because that I'll preserve for General Shankar Prasad, but it's quite clear that, a military response to China is of a different order than a military response, let's say, to Pakistan. The other thing that's quite clear is if we get militarily engaged at the LAC, Pakistan would definitely use this opportunity as a vassal state of China to simultaneously ensure that the line of control is also hot. So we may be in a situation where the LOC and the LAC are both inflamed. Can we afford that? We also have to remember there's a pandemic in our country. We have to look at the hard reality of where we are today.
I think you've asked very serious questions. I think we have to have a very objective assessment, both in government and in the political and strategic classes, of the objective realities as they exist in a comprehensive manner. We also need to make an assessment to why the Chinese have done what they have. And at this stage, my own feeling is, and I underline feeling because we don't know the full facts, and without full facts, an analysis and assessments are difficult, so you then have to really rely on instinct. So on that basis, I get the clear impression that the Chinese are out to send a signal, both to us and to the region, that India is not in their league, that we are seeing a certain pattern of aggressive Chinese behavior all around. We are not the only country that has faced it. We have faced it in one of its manifestations. The Australians have faced it in another. The region, the Southeast Asian region, is seeing it in one way. The board, all their project relating to the border, to the BRI, is those countries are facing it another way. In fact, even the Americans are confronting this. So we've got to make these assessments, and I do believe that we, during during our consideration of the way ahead, we've got to look at the entire paradigm, Barkha, that we have pursued in terms of policies, starting from 1988, when Rajiv Gandhi decided that the border issue
Yeah.
would be addressed, but that would not hold us back, China and India back, in advancing in other areas. That we will establish a cooperative relationship in other areas. In fact, we used to say that this is a model of how to handle differences. Clearly, the Chinese over the last 3 decades and more have shown no interest in or no seriousness in the resolution of the border issue, to the extent that they haven't even been willing to exchange maps relating to the line of actual control.
Oh,
So all the entire policy, and that policy is being pursued by all governments, now has to be very carefully considered whether we should now recalibrate our entire approach and not open and start closing doors which we had opened to Chinese investments, to Chinese economies. Now, this can't be done in an adventurous way, because we can't let our economy suffer. And I think what the Prime Minister meant when he said Atmanirbharta was that we must increase our manufacturing base, and that is absolutely correct. So that is one aspect. The point I'd underline again is that we can't afford a message to go to the region and our immediate neighborhood that Indians have again succumbed to pressures and the creation of facts on the ground by China. That's one. As far as your second question is concerned about Pakistan, I have 2 observations to make. I think the Pakistanis will be extremely foolish to try any adventure on the line of control at this time, because I do believe, and General Shankar Prasad would correct me if I'm wrong, that irrespective of what's happening on the LAC, we are fully competent, the army is fully competent to respond to any Chinese adventurism with a might and fury that might surprise them. That's one. And second, more importantly, perhaps China wouldn't like that either. China likes Pakistan to be a vassal state, but when the principals get involved,
okay.
then Pakistan knows, China knows what Pakistan's place is.
Okay. I saw Sushant actually disagreeing with you, so I'll bring him in before General Shankar Prasad. Sushant, go ahead.
Yeah, look, the thing is that, when Ambassador Katju says that the Pakistanis will not be that foolish, when have they not been that foolish? Should Kargil have even happened? So whenever we evaluate, and I think this is a fundamental mistake we make, Barkha, whenever we evaluate the Pakistanis, we look at them from our standpoint of rationality, not from theirs.
Yeah.
Okay, and their rational calculations might seem very irrational to us, but to them seem eminently rational. Yeah. That they screw up really bad every time they do this adventurism is another matter. But the temptation for them to be doing something at this point in time when India is involved on the Eastern Front would be just too much to not do. So, and frankly, our assumption that the Chinese would not want them to do this, I think there has to be a caveat to that. And why I say that is that as of today, I don't know what will happen 12 hours from now, but as of today, the effort, as I said earlier, seems to be to, okay, we've come up to this point, let this not escalate beyond this, and let matters stay where they are. I think that is the Chinese ploy right now. I don't see how the Indians can accept that. Now, if they're, so you are in a situation where the Chinese will say, okay, fine, let matters lie out here. We say that no, they cannot lie out here. And that's a very accident-prone relationship. Now, if matters lie out here, then yes, perhaps the Chinese will ask the Pakistanis to lay off. But if supposing, you have a shooting match on the eastern frontier, will the Chinese still ask the Pakistanis to lay off? I'm not so sure. And I can tell you this, about 2 weeks back, there is a group of Pakistan junkies who discuss these things. And that is where I raised this for the first time, that in the event something untoward was to happen on the eastern front, would our western front also get disturbed? And if you look at the spate of meetings which have been taking place, at the Pakistani deep state level, the military, all those confabulations, then I don't think we can be sanguine about the possibility that the Pakistanis are not going to do anything adventurous on the western front. I think that has to be factored in, which means that our responses, speaking as we are speaking, have to be of a nature, our posturing has to be of a nature that you put the fear of God, at least insofar as the Pakistanis are concerned. The Chinese we handle at a different level, which means, and now I'm going up the escalation ladder, that, maybe you can try out an Agni 5 missile test. Maybe some of these posturing needs to be done, so that the message is loud and clear that in case push comes to shove, then there are no limits as far as India is concerned. I know I'm being extremely aggressive when I say this, but I think this is the kind of posturing we desperately need at this point in time.
Okay, General Shankar Prasad must get the last word because he's been waiting patiently. But brief interjection, Vivek Katju, Ambassador Katju.
I entirely agree. In fact, while I was working, I saw Pakistani irrationality in Kashmir, in Kargil. It didn't make sense, and their commentators themselves said. But this is a very special situation, and I think the Pakistanis also know that the chances of a full-fledged military confrontation between India and China are low. If should that happen, then all bets are off.
That's right.
But should that happen, then all bets are off. But that is something low. And if my last words to you were that they know full well that the Indian army has the capability of reacting with full might and fury against them. So they will factor that into account too. Hence, I do believe that taking what I accept that there is a streak of irrationality, but I do think that at this time they will be a little restrained. Yes, they might try terrorism, etc. in Kashmir, which they have been, but nothing. I don't think that they'll try really a shooting match on the LOC.
Well, I hope you're right, but I somehow lean towards what Sushant is saying, because I'm looking at this week gone past and we've had deaths on 3 borders, We've had Nepal sort of flaring up. We've had Pakistan. The LOC is always hot from time to time. And now we have this fracas at the LSC. General Shankar Prasad, if you were the commander here today, what would you be advising the government to do next?
What would I be advising the government on the military action in Ladakh or overall? Would you like me to comment first on what the previous speaker has said about Pakistan participating in it?
So where do we go from here? Factoring in Pakistan, factoring in China.
Let me come one by one, the easier points first. As far as Pakistan is concerned, it will be very foolish for them to open a full-fledged front. Terrorism and trans-border firing and that kind of activity which is going on for years will continue. That's all right. But as people say, they're irrational people, therefore they do irrational things. Let me assure you that we have sufficient forces available, sufficient military potential available to deal with whatever the Pakistanis want to do. You know it very well. We have distinct corps. We have a 14 corps looking after this. We have a 15 corps looking after this. We have another 16 corps looking after another one. We have another corps looking after Punjab, and all rest down to the south of India. So there are distinct corps commanders who are looking at each sector, and they have not been denuded. So we have now given tasks to a particular corps commander to do what he needs to do. So let us forget about the 15 corps area of the line of control. Let's get back to the LAC. Now, what is the situation in LAC? And I relate it to what the nation is looking at today, what the Prime Minister articulated yesterday in a couple of minutes speech that he made. And he said that status quo ante has to be maintained. If you do not go back, there is going to be a problem. Okay. Now, he also says, whether it means much or no, doesn't mean much, that military has been given a free hand to do what they need to do. Well, whatever it is, these statements come politically quite often. Yeah. The situation today is this, that everybody, you will know, I will know, the world will know if the Chinese do not go back from where they've come 45 days ago. There are enough satellite pictures and this, that, and the other to establish where they came from and where they are. Whatever they have brought into the tactical area in the front line has to go back from where it came. All the other assets like tanks and supporting artillery and all the other military equipment that's come in the depth area must go back to from where that came. So that is the position that India stands today. Every citizen of India is looking at that position. So now let's do a small SWOT analysis, as I would call it. You will permit me a minute to do that. Sure. What is the best option and what is the good option? Shall I say not a best option? What is the good option and what is not such a good option? The good option is that we go into dialogue with China in various formats, which the previous two speakers are speaking, particularly Ambassador has spoken, whether it's diplomatic, economic, political, geopolitical, etc., and try and create a situation where the Chinese can pull back. But that is not going to be easy because it's going to be somewhat a disgraceful way of going. There is a very famous old saying, Barkha, that if the enemy, even if a cat you push beyond on a wall, you know, that fellow will attack you. So give them an honorable escape route. How are you going to do it is a matter of using your brains, your diplomacy, your political dialogue, etc. But give him an opportunity to have an honorable escape. So let him go back. It may take 1 week, it may take 10 days, but let the signals keep coming to the right people that yes, we are trying to go back. Okay. Should they not go back, which is not, this is the first option. So both countries are happy if they go back in 10 days, 15 days time, and we see progress happening, then both countries are happy, nothing like that. The other, not such a good option, they do not go back. Talks are failing, like talks are failing every day. Brigade commander's talk failed, Major General's talk failed yesterday. I don't know what's the outcome today and what will be the outcome tomorrow. But I presume they're not going to make much headway. Well, considering the not such a good option, we go to some kind of a battle, whether it is here or anywhere else. Now that will mean that we will have heavy costs to pay. Yes, we will. The Chinese will have to equally pay. The Chinese cannot say we've killed 5,000 Indian soldiers and we have lost nothing. If 5,000 Indian soldiers suffer anywhere of 3,000 or 2,000 or 1,000, the numbers don't matter. The Chinese will suffer an equal number. We've got enough artillery to tackle people on the point of contact. We have enough infantry to inflict sufficient casualties. What will happen to China's great status in the world today? I am the most powerful army in the world. I have a 10-foot tall Chinaman. India is nothing. We can chew up India in no time. We want to become global economic power. Will they not suffer economically? Of course, we will suffer. I'm not denying that. But what will be the status in the Committee of Nations today? What will be the status in the United Nations? What will be the status in the rest of the world? Will they still manage to call themselves a nation which is the most leading nation in the world today, the most powerful nation in the world today? They will be dishonored. Is that what they're looking at? The Chinaman thinks 30 years ahead, Barkha, and 30 years ahead and 20 years ahead and 10 years ahead. He's looking for a position where he's the leader of the world. He's economically the most powerful guy. He's militarily the most powerful guy. He's defeated and left behind America and the rest of the world. That is the position, that's his ambition. Will that not suffer hugely? And the last point I want to make is that please leave it to the military planners to do what tactical, strategic activity we want to do if the not such a good situation arises. You would have heard in the Bangladesh operation, the term coined at that time and came to all of us is what is called a theory of expanding torrents. What does it mean? If water flows and you will stop it for some reason or the other, it doesn't stay put. It finds way to go. Mm-hmm. So we have to think of theories like the expanding torrents. We have to think of like at least gaining a superiority at certain points. Those points can be selected by people concerned. what the potential of the opponents are, what is our potential, where we can build up, where we can do better. After all, we are a professional army. You've seen the way the Indian Army has worked for the last 20, 30 years. I mean, from 71 till 99, till in between. And also remember, Barkha, that every Indian soldier today is using his weapons effectively for the last many years. And they're all trained in using their weaponry by actual combat. So every Indian officer and soldier today, up to the rank of perhaps brigadier and major general, has gone into combat, whether it's in Kashmir or elsewhere. So this is a combat-hardened army. And an army which is very, very proud of its nation, proud of its regiments. You know how the regimental ethos takes us. So we're not going to cave in so easily.
I just want to say in the end that it is because we think all this of the Indian Army that its honor must be redeemed. And what happened to our soldiers, that the honor has to be restored, General Prasad, because that honor was taken away from them in that moment for no fault, I think, of theirs. I mean, from everything we know thus far, but as Sushant has pointed out, we do not know enough.
That's the point. We do not know enough.
That is part of the problem of the conversations we're having. We simply do not have a kind of verified account of what has happened, at least an account that is safe to put in the public domain. People of this country can then have an informed conversation about it. And I hope that happens sooner rather than later. I'm going to have to say thank you to all three of you now. We're out of time. We're here on the ground in Ladakh. I know we're going to have an opportunity to bring all three of you back. I thank you. I look for conversations to learn, and I've learned a lot from all three of you today. And I'm sure so have our viewers. Thank you, Sushant, General Prasad, and Ambassador Katju.